Is Jon Jones as good as he was 3 years ago? Does it matter? I mean, that's another thing that you have to ask yourself, right? Like, as human beings, we don't get better at something by not doing it. Now, Jon Jones has broken a ton of rules over time in terms of he's done things that nobody else can do. That's what being the youngest champion of all time is largely all about. He can do things that other people can't do. And I'll tell you, they say in fighting, when they say in fighting, it means somebody said it and it caught on before something else somebody said that caught on. I mean, just so you understand, but they say the last thing to go is your power. That's what they say. Jon never relied on his power. And even if that expression is true, if your timing and your speed and your defenses of all of it, your conditioning, if all of those things do go prior to your power, let's still observe that chain of command. And I'll tell you what the first thing to go is. I don't know what the last thing to go is. They say it's your power. I'll tell you what the first thing to go is: your ability to take somebody down. And we will see active fighters with beautiful resumes in their past for amateur wrestling that cannot take their opponent down. And we will then chalk it up to their opponent who has no resume in wrestling. We will chalk it up to they got very good at takedown defense. You're not wrong to come to that conclusion. You're just missing what else is happening, which is the wrestler stopped wrestling. And wrestlers know this in the time that they wrestle. They know the first shot is not to take the guy down. They know the first shot is to get close enough for the next shot to take the guy down. They know that the second shot is to put you in a position to set up the third shot. It's called chain wrestling. The great wrestlers, or even the decent wrestlers, don't shoot to take you down. They shoot to get in position to shoot to take you down. And when you stop wrestling, you will lose that. You'll lose your ability to chain wrestle. One of the best fights that I ever saw Frankie Edgar have, ever, was his match with Yair Rodriguez. And Frankie's double leg, his takedown, was more on point in that fight than any other match that I had seen. And Frankie's training for that contest had changed to where he went back into the Rutgers room, where he was a alma mater, and worked with the team. More for that fight than he did, at least that he told the press. And you could see it. You could see that timing was on, but you could also see Frankie, when he made that first shot, used it to set up the second shot. And I'm telling you this for a very good reason. If you get taken down by Jon Jones, but when you get up, you are now different. Whether the bell saved you, or inactivity and the referee brought you up, or you scrambled and got to your feet. If you get put underneath Jon Jones, by the time you get up, you're now different. Whether you're hurt, or you're just a little bit tired, or you're a little bit frustrated, the idea that Jon could go out there, take Francis down and keep him there, or Stipe or Ciryl Gane, right? Some of these top guys, in many ways leads you to believe, yes, Jon's going to be the champion. Jon is a disaster of a matchup. I'll just share with you, while they say its power is the last thing to go, if we're to look at the other side of the coin, I'll tell you now, your ability to take somebody down is the first thing to go. And I could personalize that. I could personalize that for my own career. When I had training like what Frankie Edgar did for Yair Rodriguez, where I really focused on the wrestling, where I went in the actual wrestling room, bent my knees, shook hands, spent 2.5 hours, left there completely exhausted. Things were different from a cardio standpoint. You could find that range. And I'll also share with you, when I took time off and I went back into the MMA gym, I could touch guys and move around, and my endurance was fine. I couldn't get them down, at least not the same. It's a different timing. It's the first thing to go. And it's a really relevant thing to look at, because Jon has changed something, which is his physiology. He wanted to get up to 240 pounds. According to pictures on Instagram, he did. What's going to be different? And I've heard a number of coaches vouching for him. Very legitimate, very good coaches, and they're being very sincere, talking about his power. But one thing that all those coaches had in common is they're mid-holders. Everyone who's talked about how much stronger and how much more power Jon Jones has was on the other side of a focus mitt. And I would just assume, even without the coach saying that, I would just assume Jon Jones at 205 pounds, Jon Jones versus 240 pounds, the 240 is going to have more power. I would just assume that. I also think that Jon is one of the great trick boxers of our sport. I don't think he gets credit for that. He gets known as a wrestler, but if you go watch Jon Jones, while his wrestling is very effective and his ground and pound is very good, he does a lot of damage on his feet. He'll reach across and hit you in the oblique. It was a kick that we didn't even know somebody could do until he started doing it. You finish every combination with a kick. Or at least if you're going to throw a kick, you do it on the back end of a combination. That's a rule in the sport. Jon Jones will walk out, kick you right in the mouth to start the fight. That's how he'll say hello. Fighters are out there touching gloves to say hi. Jon's kicking you in the mouth. Jon started his fight with Shogun for a world championship with a flying knee. Do you understand the level of confidence that you have to start a fight with a flying knee? Oh, by the way, this is the highest pressure fight. Not only are you going to become a world champion and have your dreams come true, you're going to set history and be the youngest champion of all time, and you're taking on one of the scariest guys that the sport has ever produced. He jumps in the air and knees him in the head to start the fight. I mean, right, this is a lot you're dealing with here. And I don't call Jon a kickboxer. I like to call him a trick boxer. And that's a term I learned from Dennis Hallman, and Dennis Hallman was describing Matt Hume. Dennis Hallman said, Matt Hume on his feet, he said, but it's not kickboxing. He is constantly fooling you. Matt will make you look left while he hits you right. He'll make you think he's going to kick while he's bringing an elbow to your face. He said he will trick you nonstop. He's got the greatest setups. And it's just a term that I've stolen for Jon Jones. I mean, it's trick boxing. It really is. He catches your leg on a kick. He spins around and elbows you. It's stuff that you wouldn't see. And I have to make a big deal about that, because if Jon is going to go out and he's going to win a world championship, if he's going to end up opposite Francis, the notion that Jon is going to run right over Francis because Jon is going to go take Francis down, I'll just share with you the one thing that I don't expect from Jon. I don't expect that wrestling to be as sharp as it once was. And I'll tell you somebody that I think would agree with me is Jon. Jon, even later in his fights, you can go to Jon's very last fight with Dominic Reyes. When Jon needed a score, when Jon needed a point, when Jon needed to do some damage, he didn't turn to that wrestling, did he? He turned to those elbows. He turned to those 1-2s. He went and found him with some of those kicks. And if you back up to a different fight with Santos, it's very close. I mean, that ended up being a split decision. It's a very close fight going to the 5th round. And when Jon needed to score, when Jon needed a point, when Jon needed to do damage, he didn't turn to the wrestling, did he? So I think that Jon is aware, and I think that Jon would agree with me, that over time, that is the tool, boy, that's the one. That's the one that goes dull the fastest. And so if you can't count on that and you're not turning to it, the good thing that you've got this trick boxing, right? But who do you like going to stand up fight between Jon and Francis? I mean, what if I told you those two are going to fight? Who do you think's going to win? Now, let me ask you the same question. It's going to be all stand-up. It's going to be like Adesanya versus Pereira. That, of course, we don't know to be true. That, of course, it's not like we're make-believing that Jon can't get a takedown here or there. But what would you think of the fight? I mean, what if? What if that is dull and Jon's going to have to stand with him? Are you sure Jon's going to lose? Are you sure Francis's power is going to weigh out? Are you sure Francis can ever get a glove on him? Jon's still going to be quicker. He's still going to be longer, but it's a very different fight, isn't it? It's something to look forward to. I don't expect the same Jon, but I do expect a very good one. I do expect a very dangerous one. I think the coaches, when they're saying that he's got more power, that would seem to make sense to me. And if power's the last thing to go, believe me when I tell you, the first thing to go is your ability to take that man down.